demand, you can't have demand going through, you can't pay for demand if there's no kilowatt hours going through your meter. Okay? I mean, it's just not possible. So you can't have peak demand if there's no kilowatt hours going through. So one of the things that City Power did in 2019 is that the way that they used to bill for KVA is they used to say, we're going to charge people on the three highest, we're going to take the three highest KVAs that you reached over a period in 12 months, and then bill you on the 80% average of that for the next 12 months. So let's just say in 2018, every month you should be billed on your actual KVA per month. That's how you should be billed. But they put in their tariff book, what we're going to do is we're going to take the three highest over a 12-month period, and then for the next year, we're going to bill you on the 80% average of the last of the previous years. So then in 2019, without doing any applications to NERSA and without any public participation, after the tariffs had been published, they changed the tariff, saying that we're going to go forward and bill people on the highest KVA. So now think about this. If for 11 months of the year your KVA was 200, 230, 300, 350, and then for 1 month you spiked at 600 in 2018, for 2019, they were going to bill you for the whole of 2019 at 600.
Does this include businesses? Is this how they do it as well?
This is for businesses in the industry. Okay. So go and do the calculation at 236 Rand a month or 237 Rand a month and go and see what the difference is. Go and just do the calculation and say, if your average is 230, 250, 280, 300,
times
whatever,
the 200, the tariff.
times 230, and then suddenly at 600 for 12 months, see what the difference is. Then COVID hit. We know that businesses were closed. Okay. There's no kilowatt hours going through your meter, or very little kilowatt hours going through your bill. Scientifically, you can't have a 600 kVA going through your meter when you've got no kilowatt hours going through. But City Power and the City of Johannesburg were billing all of these people at the previous year's KVA, at high KVA, when there was lots of production going through, when there was no kilowatt hours going through. Scientifically not possible, but they were billing them and saying, well, we've changed the tariff.
Well, does that not work as well, like the whole year of 2020 when we were in COVID?
So,
in essence, they should actually then have had what the lowest,
exactly,
estimated the next year on the lowest.
So we took them to NERSA. Because first of all, they didn't follow procedure. They didn't go to NERSA for an application. They didn't have any public participation to change it. They then agreed that from 2021 onwards, July 2021 onwards, they would change it back to where it was before. But they weren't going to refund people what they'd overbilled them.
Padja, how did that, they can't be benefiting. Okay, I can tell this became a story.
And this is where I have a problem with NERSA, because NERSA is the regulator and that NERSA should have enforced it. Listen, it's a very sore point with me. There are I know that there's been some court cases where in particular instances some of these things have been reversed, but it should have been done on a blanket point of view. It's wrong. You can't do things illegally and not go back and fix it. KVA is expensive, and you can't bill people illegally and take money from people and not give it back. I know that I dealt with two businesses specifically that, as a direct result of KVA and during that period, closed their doors. So it doesn't sit well with me. And I still have a fight on KVA charges today, trying to get money back from City Power. I'm trying to get journals signed off relating to that they just are dragging their heels. So, which brings me to another point. part of the problem that we're sitting with the city of Johannesburg is that when you have a query with them, their first response is take us to court. Rather than fixing it, is that, and especially when the figures are rather large, as they say, well, take us to court. No, I mean, when you're wrong, fix it. I mean, if a client owes, if a consumer owes the city the money, they must pay. It's as simple as that. The same applies to the city. If you've billed somebody incorrectly, fix it. It's not a big thing. I mean, most of these queries that are wrong is a 10-minute job, maybe an hour job to fix it. Fix it and reverse it and pay the client, credit the account or whatever, and get it done. But the attitude is, no, take us to court. No, we're not going to take you to court. There's the Systems Act and Structures Act and all those sort of things that actually not guides you, tells you how to do your job, how to fix things and do it properly. Taking you to court is wasteful expenditure. That is money that should be spent on infrastructure and service provision. There's no reason why consumers should be taking city officials and should be taking the city to court for you to do your job and for you to rectify something when you've done your job incorrectly and when you've billed somebody incorrectly. And then for you to drag queries out for years to rectify it so that you can carry on billing incorrectly, cutting people off, suspend services, etc., to drag it on and actually continue on a wasteful expenditure spree.
But there's another issue regarding that, Rene, and that is, I heard of a case of where the person took them to court. First of all, those court cases drag out forever and ever and ever. And then there's a compounded interest factor that comes into it, which the city then didn't reverse. So they reversed the stuff that needed to be reversed, but they didn't reverse the interest.
It's not just that. The problem is, as well, is that there are court orders. And the city are ignoring those as well. The arrogance has become so bad that there are individuals within the city, administrators within the city, saying, well, take me to court. Because they're ignoring court orders. And there's court orders that's been sitting there for ages that have been ignored.
But where does the buck stop, Rene?
Here again we sit with the issue of how the city is structured and what is the history of where all of these things come from, and what is our responsibility as residents at the end of the day of affecting change. So let's go back to, from a structure point of view. There's council, and council appoints, as we said before, there's the mayor who appoints the MMCs, and they ultimately appoint the city manager. And the city manager is the ultimate person who's responsible for the administration of the city. Council also, from a council point of view, when there's senior positions that need to be appointed within the city, those positions, CVs or whatever will come, they will have a look at it and final say will rest with them. It is obviously important from a fiduciary, from a management point of view, if we want any change to happen from an administration point of view, that there has to be the right structures have to be in place with the right moral values have to be in place from a council point of view. You're never going to be able to affect change in the administration if you don't have the right council in place. The current administration within the city of Johannesburg have been there for many years, certainly that I know since 2010. The culture that's been inculcated is not a healthy one. I alluded to things like when we spoke in the previous session about procurement. One of the things that haven't changed within the City of Johannesburg from an administration point of view is who's responsible for procurement. I mean, that is a very, very important portfolio within the City of Johannesburg. And if you don't clean that up, and if you don't make sure that that is squeaky clean, you're never going to clean up the city.
So in other words, that's the head of the snake. You need to take that and replace the body, put a different head on it.
Well, that's one of them. That's one of them. It's not the only one, but it's one of them. But what I'm saying to you is that I think what residents need to understand is that from an administrative point of view, things don't change overnight in the city just because there's a few changes that happen within the council chamber. There needs to be stability over a long period of time. There needs to be people with integrity over a long period of time for things to happen within the administration. The administration that's there and what's the two currently go hand in hand. And they suit one another's agenda. And I'm certainly not sitting here, and I certainly don't, and I don't subscribe to any political party. I don't promote any political party in any way. I simply just look at things from what works and what doesn't work from an administrative, from a clean point of view. And if I look at, and don't get me wrong, there's millions of things wrong in Cape Town. Lots of things. I can talk for days about what's wrong in Cape Town. But I look at the things that are right. There are people in Cape Town, both in the city and within the province, that do things with integrity, and they have spine and they stick with their principles. And they didn't fire people within the administration, but they said these are the rules that we play by. And play by the rules, or either play by the rules or go.
Okay, but it seems to me like there's a different set of rules being applied everywhere.
No, it's not. So it's not different sets of rules, because the rules are simple. If you work in my company, it's fairly simple. If you steal, you go. You do your job. I don't care if you do your job in 2 hours, but if you do it properly, then you can duck. But if you lie and you steal, then you duck. If you do it properly or whatever, then you stay. Then you grow. But the rules are pretty simple. You either do things with integrity and with honesty, or not. And if you don't do it, then you don't belong.
And what about things like the PFMA and those are rules?
But those are so those are the things that are stuck to. Those are the rules that one must stick to. It's pretty simple rules to stick to. It's not brain surgery stuff. You must just stick to those rules and adhere to those rules, and just things that make logical sense. Stick to the PFMA. Stick to the FMA. Stick to those things. Stick to the rules of the country. Don't make things up as you go along that suit you. And, if somebody offers me a sweetie and go, your sweetie is bigger than, that sweetie is now bigger than that one, so I'm going to go for that one now. But tomorrow that sweetie is bigger, so I'm going to go for that. That's not how things work. Because there's always going to be obstacles in life. And just because there's an obstacle doesn't mean to say that you suddenly change direction. I think that's the difference between what's happening in a place like Cape Town and what's happening in a place like Johannesburg, is that it's not value driven in Johannesburg. It's what's in it for me, the WIFM principle. What's in it for me? It's money driven rather than value driven and morally driven.
As a resident, Rene, I feel kind of helpless. I mean, I know everybody says exercise your vote, But in the last year, I've seen in Joburg how exercising my vote has actually meant nothing, because the council can actually vote out the mayor I voted in. And so how do I assist in making a change in these things to actually become what you're suggesting? Having a city that is value driven, having things that actually work and people working together to make a difference.
We can't affect change as residents if we don't stick together. So I look at people getting cross. In the last 2 weeks, people haven't had electricity or whatever the case may be. So they get cross with the local councillor. And I think that they say, oh, not going to vote. But it comes from lack of understanding about what that councillor's mandate is and what he's able to do. So if you understand what his mandate is and what you understand what his limited powers are, and you understand, and maybe we're going a little bit of way to debunk some of the mystery of that, then people will actually go and vote. And people will understand that if we all stand together and we make sure that we get the right people into government, into council, that they then have the ability and the stability in council, that they then will have the ability to make the necessary changes over time at an administrative level. Because only then will we as residents feel the difference. It doesn't mean to say that once we as residents have voted, that we can sit back and not do anything, because it doesn't stop there. Our participation doesn't stop there, because there's still things that we have to get involved in when it comes to things like bylaw changes and things like that, and public participation and things like that. That is incredibly important, where our knowledge and our input is incredibly important, because those sort of things, there's lots of things that have happened as far as bylaw changes in the past over the last number of years that have been flown past us, and people have not participated, that have a massive impact. And if a bylaw change is implemented today, it doesn't mean to say that we can just change it again tomorrow. But with right council in place and with the right councillors in place in those Section 79 committees and things like that, then, and with our input, those things can be changed, because they have long-term impact on our lives. And if we have children and things like that, on their lives going forward, they have massive impact on our lives, on the values of our properties, the values of our businesses, on the tariffs and all sorts of things that we pay. And if we don't pay attention, we've had nasty wake-ups. We're going to get even more nasty wake-ups if we don't pay attention. So it doesn't mean to say that we must sit back and then say, well, we've now voted, now it's their job. No, it's not. It's not somebody else's job to fix things. It starts change and fixing things starts. It's up to us to make sure that things change and things get fixed.
Okay, so in closing, what I'm hearing you say is that, in fact, each and every single resident in each and every single city should be partnering with the political parties, whichever they are, and whoever you're voting for, whoever you feel affiliated with. Your first responsibility is to cast your vote, because it's your right. And the second one is to, once you've done that, to get involved in participating in meetings, because our opinions do count and our voices are heard. Is that what you're saying?
So the first thing is to make sure that you register, obviously. I think the second thing is to make sure that whoever you cast your vote for, is to make sure that it's people with integrity, it's people that at least have policies and things like that, that stick to their principles. That would be my thing. Listen, probably not going to be very popular, but politicians are a bit like lawyers. Not the most popular people on the planet and not my favorite people. But it's like a necessary evil almost. So you've got to choose the best of the worst bunch. So just make a wise choice, whatever it is. And we must always remember, I think that the one thing that I always look at is that politicians like to make us believe that they have the power. They don't. We have the power, because the power sits with our vote. If we don't like them, we can vote them out in 5 years' time. But if they're doing a good job, so I think the whole thing starts with making wise, not emotional decisions. This is not the time for emotion. This is time for being practical. This is time for being, because it's all about economics. It's all about the stuff that affects our daily lives and our pockets and things like that. And things are tight, and they're going to get worse. And the reality of it is that the business that we are in, energy and utilities and things like that, these are the fundamental things that affect our lives. And if we don't look after these costs, they affect everything else. They affect every single other aspect of our lives. So we've got to make sure, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, because it affects everything else. And people can't afford it.
Rene, thank you so much. I'm sure that people will hear what you've said, and they can definitely see what you've said. It's obviously something very close to your heart, making a difference in people's lives. Thank you for your time. Well, folks, that's it for today's session, and we saw an emotional Rene, who's making me emotional. Thank you for your time. Get out there, consider, have a look at all of the parties, even your own party that you've been voting for years. Have a look, see what their principles are, see what their values are, and see whether you really want them representing you at council. It's important. It's important for South Africa. It's important for our future. It's important for our children. And from Urban Utilities Talks, have a great day.